Welcome to my What's the Deal With series, where I play through games for the very first time and explain both their story and their mechanics. Some are new, some are old, but the only rule is that I've never played them before. No rose-tinted nostalgia here. Today we're starting with South of Midnight, a game that caught my eye from the very moment I saw the trailers. It's developed by Compulsion Games, the studio behind Contrast and We Happy Few, both known for their unique art styles and dark surreal themes. South of Midnight continues this tradition, presenting a visually stunning world brought to life with stop motion animation. This technique shines in cutscenes and background creatures, giving the game a handcrafted storybook feel. But for general exploration, though, the stop motion can feel a bit odd when roaming the world. It really comes into its own in combat and when using Hazel's weaving powers for platforming. More on that later. The first few minutes are packed with world building. We're introduced to a seemingly friendly southern catfish who acts as our narrator and guide. This will make a lot more sense in a few chapters' time. For now, though, you'll just have to settle for me. Weavers, as we'll soon learn, have the power to reach into the past and mend deep wounds, destroying haints, reweaving the grand tapestry, and letting the world bloom once more. But the last weaver disappeared long ago. We begin by taking control of Hazel Flood, an ominously fitting name for what's about to come. She's packing for an oncoming hurricane. This is nothing new for Prospero, but the storm already feels different. A lot of characters are thrown at us. Hazel's mother, Lacey, Bunny, her paternal grandmother, and hints about her late father. Right away we see tension in the family, especially with Bunny. And just in case we missed it, the game makes very sure we know Hazel is a great runner. They mention it about 5 times in the first half an hour. Our first task is simple, check in on Bo and Mrs. Pearl. This is the first time we get to explore. The stop motion animation takes a little getting used to. It is gorgeous overall, but the small details, like the river waves, sometimes pull me out of the immersion. Fortunately, these moments are rare, and I think the style really shines. The storm escalates quickly as we explore. Hazel's trailer home is swept away with Lacey still inside. We chase after her, only to fall into the river ourselves. But instead of drowning, unseen hands pull us back. We have been chosen. We run through the storm to Bunny's mansion, a pretty stark contrast to our trailer. Family tension, anyone? Inside, things get stranger. We dream of Rue. Inside, things get stranger. We dream of Rue, who seems surprised we can even see him. Hazel's mother appears trapped, forced to relive Hazel's fall over and over. When we wake, we're locked in a room filled with clues about Bunny's connection to magic. Escaping, we find a pair of hooks, the objects of station. These hooks are a weaver's tool and Hazel's key to healing the world. Here we encounter the first stigma, scars left behind by grief, trauma, and destructive emotion. Stigma twists the environment, spawning haints and covering the world in thorns. The weaver's role is to reweave the grand tapestry, the very fabric of reality. Every thread is a life, a memory, a story. When it tears, the whole community suffers. But here's the catch. Repairing the tapestry, it doesn't erase the pain. It doesn't forget what happened. It binds the wound so life can continue. This is Hazel's journey, to learn that healing is not about undoing the past, but carrying it forward. Using the hooks, Hazel clears the stigma. The thorns vanish and Prospero blooms again. Why Bunny has these hooks remains a mystery. All we know is that the last weaver disappeared in Prospero, and now Hazel has stepped into their role. Bunny watches as we leave the Flood Mansion. She's not stopping Hazel, she's letting her go. But why? That answer won't come for a very long time. The next chapter opens with 2 big shifts. The hurricane ends as suddenly as it began, and the world outside the Flood Mansion is corrupted by stigma. This is also where the game throws us into combat. Hazel's abilities appear suddenly. She doesn't understand them and neither do we, but they're explained mostly via pop-ups. A narrative introduction would have felt more natural, but this works, if a little immersion breaking. The hooks fit beautifully into the story and gameplay. Not only do they heal stigma, but they also banish the haints, restless spirits born from trauma. In southern folklore, haints are dangerous ghosts, unlike protective ancestors. They linger due to violent deaths, unfinished business, or grief. In South of Midnight, these legends take form as twisted physical enemies born from stigma. Hazel binds, cleanses, and heals them, turning folklore into gameplay. Defeating stigma also introduced floofs. These are soft and fluffy, but importantly act as currency for upgrading Hazel's skills. You collect them in the world or as combat rewards. Later in the chapter, Hazel discovers the distaff. The distaff lets a glimpse into the past, witnessing Mahalia, the last weaver, guiding enslaved people to freedom through underground railways. Following her, Hazel finds the spindle, which allows her to weave new objects into the grand tapestry and use them as combat spells. Seeing Mahalia in action acts as a perfect tutorial, though pop-ups still appear, explicitly telling us exactly what we need to do. Throughout the game, we can also find readables, which provide deeper insight into the heart-wrenching stories that Hazel uncovers. I can't recommend exploring for these enough. They truly add depth and richness to the game. We also start learning how to solve simple puzzles, using Hazel's powers to weave objects or push and pull items in the environment. Following Mahalia and her followers through the cave, we emerge outside again, a vivid connection between past and present, trauma and healing. Hazel ventures further into the swamp, guided by the strand. This acts as the weaver's compass, directing her where she needs to go. She encounters a big catfish dangling from a tree. He reveals that a tree spirit named Benji has ensnared him. The catfish knows about weavers and can sense that Hazel is one of them. To free the catfish, Hazel must retrieve a magical bottle from a bottle tree and confront Benji's stigma. One of the most fascinating bits of folklore that South of Midnight taps into is the bottle tree. In Southern tradition, especially African American communities, people would hang glass bottles from tree branches to trap evil spirits. Restless spirits, often called haints, are drawn to the shimmering glass, and once inside, they can't escape. By morning, the sun destroys the spirits, leaving the home safe. This isn't just decoration, it's a practice rooted in West African spiritual traditions carried to the south. Over time, it became part of Southern yard culture, a mix of beauty, protection, and quiet resilience. In the game, this symbolism fits perfectly with Hazel's journey. As a weaver, she literally captures and mends spiritual damage. Like a bottle tree, her powers capture what's harmful, hold it, and transform it. The bottles become a metaphor for grief and trauma. You can't ignore it, but you can contain it, face it, and ultimately let it go. Hazel's powers continue to grow in this chapter. Double jumping, gliding, and wall climbing open the swamp, allowing exploration to feel much freer than in previous linear sections. We also discover our first health filament, which, when collecting 3, upgrades Hazel's health. This leads nicely into combat. It isn't complicated, but there is a nice variety of enemy types. Melee haints and lava haints. These get up close or stay far away, throwing mosquito-like projectiles at us. Hazel can use her newly found Weaver abilities to fight these, capture these projectiles, and throw them back. Each attack is clearly telegraphed by changes in enemy colour, giving players time to react. Combat is fairly fast-paced, with hacking, dodging, weaving, and environmental manipulation all part of Hazel's arsenal. Typically, there are 2 to 3 haints in waves throughout the area, with crowd control becoming increasingly important as enemy types get stronger. As Hazel obtains more powers, an increasing number of combat combos become available. For achievement hunters, the game encourages variety in banishing haints, which keeps the first few encounters fresh, though combat does become repetitive later. Combat only occurs within well signposted areas. Haints are not found loose within environments. Healing mechanics are also straightforward. When defeated, we're given a small time window to unravel haints, healing a small amount of damage. along with a small healing filament which is present in each area, allowing a large portion of our health to be recovered. Combat never feels too threatening. I did die several times, even on normal difficulty, but this was largely trying to perform a series of combos for achievements. Along the way, we meet Rhubarb, a seemingly crazy exile who believes Hazel is a bohag, a mythical creature known for its deceptive and malevolent nature. In folklore terms, this is more than an insult. It underscores themes of mistrust, supernatural danger, and the tension between humans and spirits within Prospero. Hazel retrieves the magical bottle and begins to uncover the trauma that lingers in the swamp. Benji, the tree spirit, was bullied by the townfolk for being different, and the cruelty escalated to the point of leaving a bear trap for him. Rhubarb, his brother, once a talented musician, had been forced to leave the town to protect his brother. Once the bottle is filled, Hazel is pursued by a mysterious, ominous black cloud during quite a fun for the player, but less so for Hazel, platforming sequence until she reaches the safety of the bottle tree. This pattern repeats throughout the game, capturing memories in each area, learning more about the inhabitants of Prospero and their traumas, and once the bottle is filled, Hazel must return to the bottle tree, pursued by these unseen hands. When Hazel reaches the bottle tree now, it is revealed that Rhubarb never forgave his brother. Rhubarb was a talented musician with friends within his town, but they must leave to protect his brother, Benji. Benji always trusted and loved Rhubarb, but Rhubarb ultimately exploited this trust, trapping Benji in the tree, a fate that ultimately transformed him into the tree itself. Hazel climbs Benji's tree, accompanied by a moving song that narrates Benji and Rhubarb's story. The music throughout the game is exceptional and one of the game's highlights. At the top, Hazel unravels Benji's wound, freeing him and allowing the catfish to go. The catfish and Hazel have a collective goal. They want to leave the swamp. We decide to work together, and climbing on the catfish, we set off, gliding through the swamp, until we stop by an enormous gator. Two-toed Tom. The catfish leaves us on the bank, instructing Hazel to ring the bell of a nearby church. While exploring, we learn a new mechanic, grappling. Combining grappling with double jump and glide, platforming suddenly becomes much more dynamic and fun. But beware, exploding mushrooms also start appearing on some platforms. As we push forward, we don't learn much about the stigma in this area, but we do uncover more about Hazel's mother, Lacey. A picture Hazel drew, trapped in what looks like spiderweb, triggers visions of Lacey clearly struggling with her role as a social worker, feeling she isn't doing enough for the vulnerable children in her care. Finally, we reach the church. After some careful platforming, Hazel rings the bell, only to realise that Two-Toed Tom is far bigger than the catfish led us to believe. Being nearly the size of an entire island, he doesn't run away as expected. Tom destroys the church. Hazel glides onto the catfish, escaping just in time, and they begin thinking about a better plan to confront the giant gator. The catfish drops us off at the hog farm, warning us that our house might have been caught up in the bending river. Sure enough, we find the wreckage, but also something else crucial. Crouton, the soft toy Hazel was packing before the storm. Crouton isn't just sentimental. He's part of the strange committee that chose Hazel as a weaver at the start of the game, and now he becomes a brand new mechanic. In the world, he can squeeze through tunnels far too small for Hazel, opening up burrows to explore, or even to be tossed across barriers that Hazel can't cross herself, eventually opening up new areas to explore. In combat, Crouton can briefly possess enemies, turning the tide where Hazel gets overwhelmed, offering another crucial crowd control mechanic. This chapter dives into the origin of Two-Toed Tom, and here Preacher Jolene takes centre stage. Her father was the farmer who ran this pig farm. After Jolene's mother died, she was left with her father and his pet gator, Tom. At first, Tom was just an ordinary gator, but Jolene's father began starving and training Tom, turning him into a living weapon. Whenever he rang the dinner bell, Tom would frenzy and attack. It was how he kept Jolene and the whole community in line. Jolene eventually escaped, but her father grew more cruel, erasing Jolene from family portraits entirely. One night, Jolene used his own tricks against him. She rang the bell while he slept, unleashing Tom on his master. Tom devoured him. Jolene carried the guilt of this act and became the turning point that led her to the church, where she began a new life as a preacher and became a pillar of the Prospero community. We also learn more about Hazel's mother through Jolene. She tells us that Hazel's mum had friends in Prospero who could have helped her, though their names remain a mystery. Jolene won't tell us yet. It's a small but powerful hint that Hazel's family history runs deeper than yet we know. And again, folklore threads through the story. Here we learn about the practice of driving iron nails or spikes into the ground near doorways, trees, or fence posts to ward off spirits. The people of Prospero weren't just afraid of storms or hardship, they were troubled by the haints. This runs through the later stories too. It wasn't just rhubarb seeing things in the dark. We learn that Jolene eventually let Tom go, but hunger drove him back here to the hog farm. He ate and he ate until he became the island-sized monster now cruising these waters. When we finally reach our trailer, Tom swallows it whole, kicking off our first boss fight. The battle runs in phases, each time Tom layering in a new attack. Most of the time, he's completely invulnerable, signposting moves that we need to dodge. But ringing the church bell drops him to the ground, exposing his wound long enough for us to strike. There's even an achievement for defeating Tom and several of the other major bosses without taking damage. These are tough challenges, sometimes frustrating, but definitely possible with enough practice. Just when it seems that we've finally beaten him, Tom swallows Hazel whole. Inside his stomach, we push through a grotesque maze before finding his wound. Defeated, Tom spits both Hazel and the trailer back out. But victory comes with dread. Hazel's mother is still missing, and the trailer is covered in strands of red yarn. The catfish tells us that this is the mark of Old Huggin Molly, a figure from southern folklore said to smother unwanted children. The catfish hypothesizes that Hazel's mother has stood in Molly's way one too many times, and in a chilling revelation, we learn that Hazel's father had once been taken by Molly too, but somehow Bunny had managed to bring him back. We head towards Bunny's weekend house, hoping to find clues about Molly's whereabouts. Along the way, we learn more about Hazel's father, Trey. Memories of Lacey's history with Bunny also surface. Trey had planned to give Lacey a family ring for their engagement, but Bunny dismissed this gesture, believing Lacey was only after the flood money. Trey, however, got Lacey a ring more suited to her style, a small but meaningful detail that shows how he cared. We also discover Trey had a sister. Bunny always favoured her, blaming Trey for anything that went wrong. One tragic day, Trey tried to wash his sister in the lake after her dress got dirty. She was too slippery to hold, and she drowned. Even seeing how cruel Bunny had always been, Hazel can't help but feel some sympathy. Both of her children had died. Bunny's obsession with the supernatural is more apparent in this chapter. We learn about the Rougarou, a shapeshifter from southern folklore, traditionally described as a person cursed to take on a wolf or dog-headed form at night. In Prospero, though, locals suspect that extreme pain can transform someone into other fearsome forms, lions, bears, or even owls. This links to Bunny's ongoing investigations into Lacey and her ex-partner, Laron. We also uncover schematics for the distaff, which makes sense. We found the hooks in Bunny's mansion. Bunny knows about Weaver's tools, but it seems that she never found the distaff. We also find red yarn left by Molly, confirming the catfish was right, and that there is a way to retrieve people taken by Molly. Oddly, there's also a huge fragment of Benji here. Why does Bunny need Benji, and what is she planning? Bunny storms in, confronting Hazel directly. She tells Hazel that she knows that she's a Weaver, but when asked if she is one herself, Bunny refuses to answer us. She later reveals that Molly took Trey to lure her and expresses Molly's hatred for Weavers, blaming them for fixing the chaos caused by her kind. She also says Laron knows where Molly is, sending Hazel to find him. Although Bunny gives Hazel clothing befitting of a Weaver, This interaction complicates Hazel's character progression and is a real problem in the story for me. After everything that we've learned, Hazel suddenly starts trusting Bunny. The catfish warns her not to, telling us Bunny has always sought to control a weaver, and now she's guiding Hazel into unknown danger. Following the catfish's instructions, Hazel investigates a nearby tree Bunny visits every year, only to discover that Bunny sealed her own daughter inside it. This mirrors Benji's fate. It also explains why there's a huge chunk of Benji inside Bunny's weekend house. But it does beg the question, what does Bunny want with Hazel? Regardless of what I think, Hazel blindly follows Bunny's instructions and starts searching for Laurent. This chapter really emphasises the importance of exploring and collecting. By finding a series of letters, we learn that Laurent was discovered alone as a young boy by a smuggling gang. He adapted quickly, earning respect within the gang, though mistakes were met with violence. When Prohibition ended, the gang moved on, but Laurent swore that he would stay in Prospero and make something of himself. The letters also hint at something unusual. Laurent doesn't seem to age. When we finally meet him at his bar, the effect is undeniable. He looks incredible for somebody supposedly over 100. Our conversation with Laurent starts calmly. We mention meeting Bunny, and he cryptically references our new outfit, hinting at secrets we're only beginning to uncover. He also questions Hazel's blind trust in Bunny, after everything Bunny has done to her and Lacey. As we press him further about why he left, his eyes shift colour, a warning. Hazel keeps asking, and suddenly, Laurent transforms. In a spectacular reveal, Laurent becomes a huge owl, a Rougarou. Bunny was right. He screams at us, flapping away and destroying the bar in his wake. The confrontation is enhanced by an incredible background art. Behind the confrontation, there's a photograph of Laurent, Lacey, and Hazel, capturing a moment where Hazel was a small child, but Laurent looks unchanged, and everything seems happy. Nearby, a painting of an enormous owl clutching prey glares over Laurent's shoulder. It's subtle, powerful storytelling. The game doesn't force us to notice these details, but they're there to reward observation and reflection. Remembering the letter we found in Bunny's lake house, where we learnt more about the Rougarou legend, a person can become one when they experience extreme pain. Exploring a nearby logging camp, we see exactly how this happened to Laurent. His mother was gravely ill, but the logging company only paid his father in worthless company script. The doctors demanding cold, hard cash refused to treat her, and she tragically died. Laurent's father never recovered from the loss and sank into alcoholism, leaving Laurent, as a child, to care for them both. On our journey, we discover a once expensive car destroyed and clawed, clearly the work of Laurent in his Rougarou form. Further exploration of the sawmill reveals a confrontation with the boss, who pulled a gun, but it was Laurent's father who was shot. This ties back to the car and shows Laurent exacting revenge on the people who wronged him. I love how the game encourages us to piece these events together ourselves. We aren't just told the story, we reconstruct it from the environment, the collectibles, and visual clues. It's subtle, immersive storytelling at its best. In the middle of this exploration, the catfish warns Hazel once again, don't blindly trust Bunny. The swamp is full of whispers and rumours about dark magic originating from Bunny's mansion. It fits perfectly with what we've already discovered. The stigma in the swamp traces directly back to Bunny's house, as we saw when we first uncovered the weaver's hooks. Determined, Hazel sets out to reweave Laurent. The confrontation with the Rougarou begins as she tries to reason with him, but negotiation fails and combat ensues. The fight is exhilarating, reminiscent of the two-toed Tom battle. Laurent shifts between phases, swooping through the air, creating tornadoes around Hazel, keeping the encounter dynamic and tense. Once defeated, Laurent returns to his human form. His clothes, though, are miraculously undamaged. Hazel apologizes for all that has happened to his family, and he opens up about the lingering guilt from his revenge on the sawmill boss. He explains why he left Lacey, the Rougarou, and the anger it brings, has always been a part of him. He didn't want to risk hurting her or Hazel, even though his absence caused them pain. When Hazel tells Laurent that Molly has Lacey, he responds cryptically, confirming that she must be in pain. Laurent doesn't know the exact location of Molly's lair, but he does know it's somewhere on a nearby mountain known as the Witch's Nose. Then, in a display of mastery over his curse, Laurent transforms into the Rougarou once more, controlled, purposeful, and no longer a force of blind rage. With him as a guide, Hazel prepares to track Molly and rescue her mother. Climbing the Witch's Nose, we find letters about a missing boy, Thomas Porter, with search and rescue out looking for him. Later on, we find a letter from Thomas saying he's safe and doesn't want to come home, and search and rescue just stop looking for him. We are introduced to our last mechanic, wind flying, allowing us to fly through gusts of wind. It's a really nice way to see the world. During her climb, Hazel finds a first aid kit tangled in a web. This allows us to glimpse Lacey, wishing she could do more for the children in her care. She tells us Jolene knows of somebody outside the system who could help her, an echo of what Jolene herself told us. The identity of this person is still completely unknown to us and to Hazel. In the mountain town of the Holler, Hazel meets Itchy, the very last person still living there. He claims he was the only schoolchild not taken by Molly. He offers to sell us a ticket for the low price of $1 to let us see all of the places Molly terrorized. After a playful back and forth, despite Hazel not being able to pay, Itchy relents and lets her look around. Exploring the Holler reveals the truth of the town's tragedy. The children here were neglected and mistreated at home. Those brave enough to approach Molly's house were rewarded with toys, food, and clothes, comforts that they were denied by their family. But soon these children began disappearing. Letters sent to the sheriff begged him to investigate, but he brushed them aside, claiming there were no evidence. Inspecting all signs and clues, it becomes clear that hugging Molly is the same figure Hazel glimpsed all the way back at the bridge, confirming Lacey was in fact taken by Molly. As Hazel continues her search, she uncovers Itchy's own horrific story. He endured beatings from his father until one day Red Yarn led him to a fire at Molly's house. There he confessed his darkest secrets, including his fear of his father. The very next day, his father died in a so-called accident at the factory, but his body was wrapped in red yarn. Itchy knew instantly. Molly had killed his father. Consumed by guilt, he carried the belief ever since that his words caused his death. Back at the bottle tree, Hazel speaks to Itchy again. He tells her something chilling. Molly only ever took the children who wanted to go with her. Itchy, too afraid, stayed behind and now remains the last soul left in the Holler. After clearing the tangle at Molly's house, Hazel sees the truth of the past. The adults once confronted Molly in her monstrous form and drove her away, but she returned, taking the children one by one until only one remained. Furious, Hazel declares that Molly tore families apart and swears that she won't let that happen to hers. Upon entering Molly's house, we find lots of missing children's posters, and even a report from Lacey herself saying one of the children in her care was severely malnourished and needed to be removed from their family as soon as possible. This part of the story really doesn't make sense to me. Up until this point, we've repeatedly been told that Molly only takes children who are mistreated and who choose to go with her. From the evidence we've uncovered, it's clear that Molly likely didn't steal Lacey away, but Hazel refuses to see that. Combined with a blind trust in Bunny, this really undermines any of Hazel's character development. I understand Hazel's desperation to get her mother back, but ignoring everything that she's known all of her life, like Bunny's mistrust of Lacey and her lack of support for Hazel herself, and everything she's learning now, such as Molly not being the monster who preys on children that people are always talking about, feels very inconsistent. Even having Hazel pause to question these things, instead of instantly dismissing them, would have strengthened the story. It is frustrating because folklore stories themselves are deeply engaging and motivated me to uncover every scrap of lore I could. But Hazel's lack of growth and her unwillingness to reconcile the truths that she's finding make it harder to stay invested in her journey. Again, despite what I think, Hazel pushes on relentlessly to Molly's lair. Molly greets us with a puppet show, clearly trying to reveal what happened during the flood. But Hazel refuses to listen, lashing out, driving Molly to flee. From here, the environments shift dramatically. Gone are the swamps, forests, and small towns we've explored so far. Instead, Molly's lair is a strange, imaginative space, a town for children carved inside the mountain. Each room feels like a child's bedroom, brimming with toys and small details. One of the most striking sights is a mural of Lacey, painted with clear love by the children, but Hazel only feels confusion at seeing her mother depicted this way. The journey through the lair leans heavily on platforming puzzles. Some are simple jumps and dashes, while others involve clever mechanics, like lighting small flames that create gusts of wind that Hazel can ride. It's playful, fittingly childlike, and a refreshing change in tone before the inevitable confrontation. At last, we find Lacey, bound in red yarn. Molly reaches out trying to help. Hazel forces her away, triggering a boss fight. Like the earlier battles, Molly's attacks are clearly signposted, forcing us to dodge, jump, or dash at the right moments. Between phases, Hazel is chased through different sections of the lair, with Molly herself reaching out to snatch her. It's a dynamic and fun fight, with great pacing and spectacle. When Molly finally falls, Hazel discovers Lacey's locket. In it is a memory of the flood, Lacey being rescued and cared for by Molly. For the very first time, Hazel begins to understand the truth. A child appears, confronting Hazel, telling her that Lacey saved them all, and a warning that she never liked mean people. Crucially, Molly is still alive, and Hazel presses deeper into the lair. But the reunion is short-lived. When Hazel catches up to Molly, she finds Bunny already there, absurdly out of place in her delicate shoes on the mountain, cutting Molly open. With her powers revealed at last, Bunny holds Hazel helplessly in the air and declares that she will use Molly's heart to save her daughter. Then, with no hesitation, she throws Hazel, her granddaughter, from the top of the mountain. In the unconscious dream world, Hazel sees Rue picking up Lacey. His voice is unmistakable, the same one that haunted us in the fog whenever we tried to return the memories to the bottle tree. Rue tells Hazel to meet him at Kushmar's cabaret, where he and Lacey will be waiting. As he parts, he leaves a golden coin for us. Hazel wakes to find the loyal crouton standing guard. The ever watchful catfish also arrives, and Hazel shares what she's learned. The catfish warns her that Kushmar's cabaret lies in the land of dreams and nightmares, a place no one should wander willingly. But when has Hazel ever listened to him? To make matters worse, Hazel realizes her spindles are gone. While the catfish searches for a way out, Hazel sets off to find them. Along the way, Hazel encounters Mahalia again, this time finding a lost child and gently guiding him back to his mother. When Hazel asks the catfish about this, he explains that Mahalia once had a camp in this place. Hazel is convinced Mahalia is trying to tell her something, and she goes searching. Just before finding the camp, Hazel clears some stigma and finds her spindles again. At the ruined camp, a strange puzzle awaits. 4 groups of fireflies must be gathered to light a great bonfire. Once it blazes to life, an owl swoops down, startling a massive shape stirring in the river. At first, Hazel braces for another fight, but the creature cowers from her. Crouton bounds forward, fearless as ever, and suddenly the great creature shifts from fear to playfulness. Hazel, impatient as always to chase after Lacey, tries to turn away, but for the first time Mahalia speaks to her. It's only a brief exchange, yet it softens Hazel's resolve. She decides to stay, to play hide and seek with the river creature. The moment is tender. Hazel names the creature Honey, a simple term of endearment that sticks. It seems that this interaction with Mahalia reminds her that a true weaver isn't just somebody who patches what's already been broken. They must nurture and protect. Honey, now trusting Hazel, leaves her back to his home, where at last Hazel rests. I find this extreme turnaround of Hazel very hard to reconcile. However, thinking about everything that's happened to her, she's lost her mother again. She understands that Bunny was just completely using her, everything that she knew from the catfish, but completely ignored. But at least she's now on the right path. When Hazel wakes, the peace doesn't last. A thunderous roar echoes across the swamp. Honey stiffens, clearly recognizing it, and bolts towards the sound. Concerned, Hazel gives chase. Honey helps clear the way, shifting logs, moving rubble, until we come upon the wreckage of a beached riverboat, half swallowed by the swamp. Here Hazel uncovers a memory. A mother named Ayatunde was travelling aboard with an infant son. Upon learning of Mahalia's camp on the nearby shore, Ayatunde made a desperate choice. Rather than continuing towards a life of bondage, she leapt from the boat into the river's dark waters. Hazel doesn't yet see the full picture, but she feels Ayatunde's pain and vows to help. Exploring further, Hazel finds signs of the pursuit. The crew hunted Ayatunde as she tried to hide her baby. Separated in the chaos, she never found him again, but Mahalia did. Piece by piece, Hazel finally realizes Honey is Ayatunde's son, and the monstrous Rougarou that hunts the swamp is Ayatunde herself. Her grief and rage terrified the riverboat crew, driving most of them into the night. Only the captain stayed behind, and in her fury, Ayatunde tore the vessel apart. Now, at last, Hazel brings mother and son back together. Their monstrous forms soften, unravelling into human, though ghostly figures. Reunited, Ayatunde and Honey leave the swamp, finally at peace. Hazel then finds the catfish waiting, but this time he's not alone. An enormous decaying ferryman looms in a rowboat. Shaking bones. To cross into the land of dreams and nightmares, he demands payment. By some grim twist of fate, Hazel already carries the coin Rue left her. The catfish warns her once more. This is a path he cannot follow, but Hazel's mind is made up. She pays the ferryman, and the rowboat pushes off into the dark. Things really are very different now. Reaching the crossroads, we meet a very complicated but fragile signpost. We follow the way signs posted towards the town of Tapestry. Each time we are walked back to the beginning, but each time something is different. Eventually Rue's carriage appears. Upon entering, it certainly is bigger on the inside than the outside. It is packed full of mementos from people who had either tragic or selfish lives. Eventually, exploring this multi-story carriage, we find the box we were packing before the hurricane. We get a call from Lacey and Rue asking us to meet them at Kushmar's cabaret. He has a proposition for us. Hazel steps forward and is swept away, her already mystical clothes replaced by even more elaborate finery, as though dressed for the stage. The town of Tapestry sprawls before her, unreal, dazzling, and filled with desperate people locked inside buildings. They chase illusions, living half lives inside stitched dreams, unable or unwilling to leave. Hazel begins to understand. Rue is using them, their emotions, their longing, their despair, all woven into this place, but to what end, we still have no idea. We climb the clock tower at the very centre of town. There are some really interesting puzzles requiring all of Hazel's newfound powers as a weaver to solve. Finally, we leave the tower, reaching Kushmar's cabaret. Unsurprisingly, for what we've already seen, the audience is full of ghosts, and Rue starts to let us in on what's going on in the town through a choreographed song which Hazel is forced to play part in. We find that Kushmar is in charge, an all-powerful being who feeds on the emotions and fears of people. However, Kushmar can only feed on people who are brought to town, and that is Rue's purpose. Rue controls Hazel throughout his song, showing he really is the puppet master. Rue offers people ways to change their life. These are the events we see people trapped in throughout the town, but this clearly comes at a cost. Rue gives Hazel a key to the door, just like those scattered throughout town, telling us Lacey is through it. But he will be asking for a favour from us later. Without asking what this is, Hazel heads into the door. Like all of South of Midnight, the town of Tapestry and those who dwell there are bound in folklore. It feels like Rue's masterpiece, not a place that exists in the world, but one woven from threads of longing, regret, and despair. The carriage stuffed with mementos sets this up perfectly, each object belonging to somebody who met a tragic or selfish end, now tied into the greater tapestry of the town. In Southern folklore, there's an old idea that objects can carry a person's shadow, their energy, their unfinished story, and Rue seems to exploit that. The townsfolk themselves aren't whole people anymore. They're like living haints, illusions stitched into being by Rue's weaving. They believe the visions around them because that belief is what sustains the place. Without their desperation, their hunger for what might have been, the fabric of the town would unravel. This is all built upon Southern folklore. Kushma, revealed in the cabaret, is the perfect folklore figure, a dream devil who feeds on their fear, greed, and regrets. In Cajun and Appalachian lore, the Kushma was said to be a shadow being that visited sleepers. Making him the one Rue serves ties the story to the deeper tradition. Kushma is too powerful to reach into the world alone, so he needs an agent to fetch souls and stitch them into his dream town. Rue then is both ferryman and trickster, pulling people into this unreality under the guise of offering second chances. Rue giving Hazel the key is a perfect puppet master's trick. He never lies outright, but he never reveals the cost. In Southern tales, bargains with trickster spirits or crossroad demons always hinge on that hidden price. Hazel's failure to ask what Rue's favour might be reinforces her vulnerability here. Her desperation for Lacey outweighs the caution the folklore itself warns about. We are walked back to the beginning of the game, packing before the hurricane. But this time Hazel is dressed as though she never left Kushmar's cabaret. Instead of checking on Beau and Miss Pearl, she clears the road, desperate to create a route of escape, only to find that she is, once again, too late. Hazel realizes that this cannot be real, and the mirror cracks. These are the illusion that Kushmar spins, the snares that keep people bound to the town of Tapestry. Rue appears, claiming he is trying to tame a creature powerful enough to bring Kushmar down. As always, Hazel ignores every warning, including Rue's plea not to face Kushmar alone, and presses on. She threads her way through a series of strange puzzles, setting scenes like in a movie, peeling back the false fronts of the town until finally she finds Lacey, trapped inside her own illusion, still locked inside the trailer. And then comes the fight. Kushmar, the great terror whispered about all this time, becomes the game's most disappointing boss. Instead of a towering, grotesque foe like Two-Toed Tom or the Rougarou, the battle is reduced to wave after wave of haints. Only after Hazel has filled the bottle by defeating enough of them does Kushmar unravel, and Hazel returns safely to the bottle tree. We wake once more in Rue's trailer. He insists Lacey is back in Prospero, but reminds Hazel that she still owes him a debt. His request is a simple yet ominous one: deliver a hairbrush to Bunny. This is a brush that belonged to Bunny's daughter. Rue calls Bunny a false stitcher, one who twists the grand tapestry to serve her own ends, damaging what was meant to be whole. Hazel agrees to deliver the hairbrush on the agreement that afterwards she is done with Rue. We're warped into the Flood family graveyard, finding Lacey standing before Trey's grave. Lacey appears, calmer now, as though she finally understands what happened. She wants nothing more than for the two of them to go home together, but Hazel still has to fulfill her bargain for Rue. At Bunny's mansion, Hazel discovers the truth. The magic Bunny had worked so hard to weave. The rituals that put Hazel in danger and tore Prospero apart had failed. All of it for nothing. Alongside Rue, Hazel convinces Bunny to take the brush. Bunny knows what this means. She knows she will be bound to the town of Tapestry. She knows that whatever she finds will not be real. But she goes willingly. What happens next is left for us to decide. It seems Kushmar has not been destroyed, only forced into hiding. The town of Tapestry must still exist, full of desperate souls. And now Rue and Kushmar have a powerful false stitcher in their grasp. The question hangs heavy. What use do they have for Bunny? I believe Kushmar buys his time, feeding on those trapped in the town of Tapestry until his strength is restored, until he can return for more souls and spread his influence even further. As Rue leads Bunny away, the Flood mansion begins to collapse. Only then do we realise it was Bunny's weaving that held the house together all along. With her gone, the stigma tears it apart in moments. We last see Hazel with Crouton and Catfish preparing to leave.
How a new weaver
She says she has to meet with Lacey and Laurent. It feels like the perfect ending for her journey.
Not bad at all.
Slightly too
Hazel
perfect.
I appreciate it.
Even after everything we've seen
I
of the
gotta
town
get
of
going.
Tapestry, we're left with
Said I
one
meet my
final
Laurent for
question.
dinner.
Can we be sure
See
that
y'all
this
later.
ending is real? My final thoughts are I really enjoyed The South of Midnight. The stop motion animation and the art style worked beautifully, and the music was fantastic, woven into the game to give each story more resonance. Movement and platforming started out a little slow, but as Hazel's powers grew, so did the fluidity of play. What began as narrow, linear paths in the first few chapters quickly opened up into wider spaces filled with hidden rewards. The most rewarding part by far were the story collectibles, which added a real depth to the world. I replayed chapters again and again until I had found every single one, along with all the floofs, tin flips, and health filaments needed for the full set of achievements. Combat was simple, but in a good way. Dashing and close quarters fighting felt fun and fluid, even if upgrading abilities sometimes felt more like a box to tick than a meaningful change. The pacing could have been sharper. Some chapters dragged on, others were over in minutes, and the final acts felt rushed. Still, outside Kushmar, every boss fight was memorable and carried real weight. On my first playthrough, I found the ending underwhelming, but in writing this reflection, I've come to appreciate how well it fits the story. Perhaps that's the point. Now we've walked in Hazel's footsteps, can we see through Kushmar's illusions, or are we still caught in them? I'll leave that for you to decide.